Well, thank you so much for making time for us today. And we're collecting these interviews for the Historical Society. I'm just interested in life growing up in Blowing Rock. And then you've got a very interesting family too. So just to start, if you could please give us your name and the year you were born.
Okay, I'm Charles Davant. I'm Charles Davant III, actually, and I was born in 1946. I'm old.
And were you born in Blowing Rock?
I was born in Charleston, South Carolina.
And how long have you lived in Blowing Rock?
We moved up here about 1948 when I was 2 years old.
Okay. And then, what were your parents' names?
My father was Charles Davant Jr. My mother was Harriet Browning Davant.
And what did they do for work?
My father was a doctor, general practitioner, and my mother mostly raised kids and tried to keep track of my sister and me.
Mm-hmm. And so I've heard that your grandfather also worked on the Blue Ridge Parkway?
My mother's father was R. Getty Browning, and he was chief locating engineer for the North Carolina Highway Department. And he actually walked every foot of the Blue Ridge Parkway. Hell, it had a lot to do with laying it out. He also had a lot to do with the parkway being in North Carolina. He was part of a group that went to Washington to lobby for North Carolina against Tennessee, which wanted the parkway to go through Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. And so was your mother's father, was he from North Carolina?
He was, yeah, Raleigh.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually Durham, I guess. My mother was born in Durham.
Oh.
Yep, there was an interesting article back in the, I guess, 1950s about him in the Saturday Evening Post. It was called The Pathfinder of the Moonshine Mountains, and about some of the people that he had to deal with, because a lot of people did not want to give the parkway easements and things like that, or sell their property to the parkway for almost nothing.
Mm-hmm. Did he tell you any stories or anything about that time?
Again, it's been a long time. He died when I was about 16, 18 years old, I think. So my memories don't go back that far and that well.
So you were born in Charleston. Was your father from Charleston?
Yeah, my father was, actually he was born in Columbia, South Carolina, and his father built highways and airports. And I think Dad went to something like 16 different schools along the way, because they'd be in there doing a highway project, build the highway and be done, and they'd go on to the next one. So he lived all over North, South Carolina, Georgia.
Mm-hmm. And then, do you know where your dad went to medical school?
South Carolina, Charleston Medical College of South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And so you all moved up here, you said 48?
Roughly, yeah. Dad had gotten out of the Navy, had gone into practice in Lenore, and at Blowing Rock had Dr. Warfield, who was a lady doctor here, sort of part-time, and she roped Dad into coming up one day a week to see patients when she was gone. And he decided he liked it up here, and at about that same time the polio epidemic was raging, particularly in Caldwell County down in Lenore. So Dad actually rented a cabin up here and sent my mother, my sister, and me up here to get us away from the polio.
Mm-hmm. And then, so when did your dad start practicing up in Blowing Rock?
It would have been about 1948, I think.
Mm-hmm. And so was there a time where it was like Dr. Warfield and your father were both had their own clinics? Or?
As far as I know, I don't know that they ever actually worked together. There was down by the Presbyterian Church, which is sort of where the parking lot is, and one of their buildings was actually a medical clinic, sort of a 4-bed hospital where they delivered babies and things. That's where my sister was actually born.
Mm-hmm. And so then do you know like when your dad opened his own clinic?
Basically he would have been seeing patients somewhere up here, but the actual hospital here was started, maybe completed in 1952. And it had a one wing for the medical clinic. people always thought that my family owned the hospital. Actually, we always just had a lease for the property. It was a community hospital, and it was funded generously by people like Ann Cannontal's Reynolds Tobacco Forsyth. Dad delivered all 4 of her children here in Blowing Rock.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And that's so you leased the building from the town?
No, we leased it from Blowing Rock Hospital.
Okay.
So
very interesting. Now, so growing up in Blowing Rock, did you attend the Blowing Rock school here?
I spent my first 8 years at Blowing Rock Elementary School, and kind of interesting back then too. Not a tremendous lot of kids and a lot of combination grades. I think I was in a combination 5-6 along the way. But when I turned 13, I went off to school in Virginia. I went to a boys' school, Woodbury Forest. If I had stayed in Blowing Rock, my graduating class from Blowing Rock High would have been 12 people. And out of those 12 people, I think 2 went on to college. So there wasn't much choice but to go on.
Mm-hmm. So after you went to Woodbury Forest Boys School, that was your high school,
right?
And then you went to college?
I went to Duke for 4 years, and then I went to medical school in Chapel Hill for 4 years. I bleed dark blue.
It's like, wow, a Blue Devil and a Tar Heel, right?
Mostly, yes. And then I spent 3 years up in Virginia doing a family medicine residency. So that actually totals up to about 15 years when I was much more gone than when I was here.
Mm-hmm. And so then after you're doing the residency at the family practice, and then did you come back here?
Came back in 1975 and went into practice with my father and Dr. Lynn George, who were here.
And Lynn George, was that L-Y-N?
L-Y-N-N.
And is that a lady or?
No, it was a gentleman.
Okay, George. Okay. And so, how long did you practice with your dad?
I think Dad died in 2003, I believe, and he wound down considerably before then. But every 5 years or so, he'd come in and say, "I think I've got a few more good years." We all had contracts with the practice, which was a professional corporation. But Dad didn't work very hard. Last few years he was on dialysis, and he might have still seen a few patients along, but these were old friends and people he'd seen for years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was more seeing friends almost
at
that point, and just regular. That's incredible that he served the community for that long. Did you enjoy working with your dad?
Pretty much, yeah. We didn't always agree on things, but most of the time he did things his way, and I could do things my way, and there wasn't much problem with it.
Mm-hmm. Fun. And so he passed away, and you said in 2003. Mm-hmm. And then how about your mother? When did she pass away?
My mother died about a little over 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was almost 98.
Wow. So you said you have a sister. Does she live around here?
Sometimes. She is part-time in Florida, part-time up here. She just, after my mother passed away, she wanted the whole family home, and she's pretty well redone it. So she spends the summer here and goes back to, right now, Tampa in Florida. She's got Diane Davant Interiors. She is a interior designer, I guess I can't say decorator, she's a designer.
So when you were growing up in Blowing Rock, what did you do? Like what would the kids do for fun?
Well, we didn't have soccer, we didn't have t-ball, we didn't have a lot of stuff like that. There was basketball, we had the gym down at the school, which is still there. And we spent a lot of time outside. I think when I was 12 years old, I was given shotgun, and my friends and I would go out and hunt squirrels and things like that. And I don't think we got too many, but it was a good way to spend the day out with your friends. And nobody ever shot anybody, so actually we'd shoot squirrels with 22s usually, but I had a 410 too. So
fun. So did you ever do any hunting around here otherwise?
I used to go out. I've been out for deer and grouse, but that's been 40, 50 years or so ago. It's a lot of work, and I don't need the deer, so. There are a number of deer around here now I would love to shoot, but that's because they're eating my hosta.
Yes, definitely. They are a nuisance. So you and your friends would go and play outside. Were there any particular places you'd go? Any trails, or go play by the lake?
Oh, there were trails everywhere. And again, when I was growing up as a teenager, there were a lot of people that came up for the summer from Florida. And I had a friend who stayed out at Chitola. His grandparents owned it at the time, and we would canoe on the lake at Chitola. In the wintertime, we would ice skate on sometimes Bass Lake, sometimes the lakes down at the motels.
Wow, that's cool. So being one of the full-time residents here as a child, did you play with local kids a lot?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I went to school with local kids.
So did you all move when you moved up here, or is that kind of
First place I ever remember living up here, well, there was a cabin or something Dad rented a couple of summers when he decided to move up here full time. The only place we could find full time was a little place called Ragged Garden. And my earliest memories, I think, in Blowing Rock are squashing bugs on the fireplace down at Ragged Garden. We were only there for a few months until they found something else. And then about 1950, 52, they bought the house where it is now.
Wonderful. Now, you told me a couple years ago after an event about sledding as a kid, and that they would block off one of the roads for you to sled down?
Exactly. If you go up Chestnut Drive, you get up right out to the driveway to our house there, right down, I think is it Hinkle Street? It goes down to the school, and that would be typically blocked off. We would go out with a garden sprayer and spray it with ice, spray it with water so it would freeze. We'd get a good surface on it. And you could sometimes start part of the way up Hospital Hill, come down, if you could make the turn, go on down to the school. If the weather was right, we would sometimes spend an evening sled riding down Globe Road. And you could go all the way down Globe Road till you got down 3 or 4 miles. You had to have somebody go down with a car to bring you back up.
Your dad had the hospital, and then and then you were gone as a teenager, so that kind of takes that question out. Would you come back in the summers, when you were at the boys' school?
Well, typically, when I was at Woodbury or in college at Duke, I'd have the summers off. When I was in medical school, sometimes I'd be doing a rotation someplace else or doing something else. And then from 1972 to 75, I was full-time in Virginia. Might get home for a holiday or something like that, but
And when you were gone, were you just itching to come back here? Or you trying to find your way back to Blowing Rock?
Not really. I'm pretty well decided I was coming back. I had a couple of other very enticing offers back then. I almost wound up in Gloucester, Virginia, up there on the Chesapeake Bay, and a couple of other places, but I decided I'd come back home and see how it went.
That's cool. Were you a member, was your family a member of any of the churches around here?
St. Mary's.
St. Mary's. And then were there any of the preachers that you remember?
We got a long list, could go back through. But I tell people I'm not a member of any organized religion. I'm an Episcopalian. So, but we had Father Courtney. You can remember some of the preacher's daughters and everything along the way, but we won't go into that anyway.
Let's see. So, growing up, did you have a favorite store in town to go visit?
One of the favorite stores for all the kids was right up there on the corner of Sunset and Main. That was Story's Soda Shop, Coleman's Story. And I'm sure people will tell you all kinds of stories about Coleman's right there. But we would sit in the booths sometimes for hours and just watch people go by. Mm-hmm. I can remember one time we built a radio transmitter and we got a transistor radio and put it in the mailbox, which was right there on the corner out there. We could sit inside it. Somebody would come in and put some mail in there, and somebody would say, no, not that way, or turn it inside, and sit there and talk to them and, and watch the reaction and everything. It was sort of like candid camera. Mm-hmm. But Coleman's was there, all the time, and that's the big hangout for kids. And then, of course, we had Sonny's Grill, which was also, and you could get a 25-cent hamburger and a 5-cent Coke. Mm-hmm. And then on up and down the street, there were no place else that was really a hangout for the kids that much. And then we had the Bark and we had the Antlers out now, what was the Ridgeline, and which is now Wheelie's. At one point was the Bark, where there were parties and you could buy beer. And then we had the Antlers, which is now where Bistro Roca is too. And there was only one rule down there about buying beer. You had to be able to see over the bar.
Yeah, so some people could get in there a little bit younger than others.
Exactly.
So did you ever go to parties at Antlers or the Park?
Oh, yeah. Not as much there, but a group of kids would go out and somebody would load up with some beer. The other thing that was noted, Blowing Rock was dry, Boone was dry at the time. So if you wanted to buy a case of beer, you had to drive down to Lenore, and you had to have somebody that was 18 that could go in and buy it. So we spent a lot of time cultivating the 18-year-olds with cars and you'd go to somebody's house or, and have a fairly good party, and nobody got very snockered and nobody got drunk and driving away anyway. So. Mm-hmm. But we had a good time.
Yeah. Was there ever any music played around here? Did you ever go see any musicians or any people you knew that would play music at their house or anything?
Not nearly like it is now, where you've got music everywhere. I can remember Doc Watson used to walk up and down the streets of Blowing Rock playing and collecting money. And then we had the ski lodge here in Blowing Rock a little bit later on, and they would have music at night. And you could go out and have a beer and listen, and Doc Watson played there occasionally. And again, I remember one night I was out there, Doc Watson was playing. Nobody knew who Doc Watson was. This was before he was paid. And mostly people were just sitting there talking and running their mouths, and Doc Watson's trying to be heard. Mm-hmm. But later on, it got better out there.
So did you ever attend or participate in the horse show?
I would go to the horse show every now and then. The horse show's been going on for 100 years, and I was never that interested in horses. My father's father raised Tennessee walkers, and he would come up with his Tennessee walkers, and I'd go to go out there and watch them, and I like to watch the jumpers and everything. Mm-hmm. We had a fairly well-known local Dude Teague who was a mason.
You said his name was Dude?
Dude Teague, yeah. Everybody can tell you about Dude Teague.
So who was he? What did he do?
He was local. He was a mason. He did rock work. And you would wind up with what people called Dude Teague memorial parks. You'd hire Dude to come do a small job for you. And by the time he was done, you would have rock walls and flower beds and barbecue pits, and it just went on and on and on. And the other thing was, the word was you always had to pin him down for a price. And I had him pinned down one time to do a little walk repair for me. And he came in and did it, looked nice, I paid him. And about a week or two after that, I got the bill from Paul Coffey for the cement, the sand, the gravel, and everything else. I neglected to make sure that the fixed price included the materials, but he was noted, again, he got the name Dude because he liked to dress up. And at some point, probably back in the 40s or 50s, somebody said, "Who's that dude over there all dressed up?" But he would go out, and he was an old friend of the family. He would occasionally shoot some trout and bring them to us. When I say shoot some trout, he would go out, look at the trout swimming there, shoot next to him with a .22, stun the trout, float right on up. Didn't have to bother with a hook and line.
I've never heard of somebody doing that.
And the Teague family, who lived down on Ransom Street, was somewhat famous because he named all his boys after the James boys. There was Frank and Jesse and such, and they were interesting characters anyway. Most of that branch of the family's gone. We used to say there were good Teagues and bad Teagues, and Dude's side was the bad Teague side.
It's funny, everyone ended up with the Duke Teague Memorial Park. You just keep adding to the job and adding to it. But that's just interesting. So it's like there are probably some of his rock walls still standing around.
As you go down by Boar Hill Lake, the bridge, right down there next to the Ann Cannon, to the gardens and everything, is one I remember him working on.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that's really cool because those are people that make a lasting impact on the town through their personality, but also through their handiwork. You said your grandpa had the Tennessee Walkers. Would you ever go riding around here?
I used to go riding. I never really enjoyed riding that much. So my sister was heavily into horses and had a horse. She actually had a horse right here in Blowing Rock. There was a little stable down below the main house.
And so then I've heard that your dad was a pilot.
And
he
was.
He had a plane, and where did he fly out of?
He flew out of Hickory. He lost friends that crashed trying to get in and out of Boone. He would never fly in and out of Boone. Thought it was very dangerous, so he kept his plane down at Hickory. Took 45 minutes to get from here to there. And he flew all over the place, but primarily down to Hilton Head. He had a place down there, and he would actually land on the beach down there. Wow. This was before there was a decent airport down there.
That seems very terrifying, to land on the beach.
It's wide and flat.
Wow, that's incredible. Did your family employ any local people for staff around the home?
We had a lady named Leslie who was with the family for 20 years or so. We had Mabel Church, who was probably with the family for 30 years or so. And her husband also did yard work and everything for our family. But Mabel was the one, if they had a party or something like that, they would call her in, and she was famous for her biscuits.
Mm-hmm. Good biscuits. So Mabel was kind of like the cook or housekeeper?
All of the above.
Yeah. Nanny, everything, right? And then and landscapers around, that's great. And were they all from here?
Right, locals.
Mm-hmm. And then, so did you ever, do you ever remember ever working with, you're a medical doctor and you have a pharmacy and everything, but any local remedies or home remedies that people have?
There are a lot of home remedies people up here used to use. My favorite concoction was always whiskey, honey, and lemon juice, which would cure almost anything. But I had one patient that when he got a cold or something like that would eat a teaspoonful of Vicks Vapor Rub and swear that it cured everything. And again, a lot of people would take sips of kerosene or things like that along the way too. But the old mountain remedies were almost gone by the time I got back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whiskey, honey, lemon juice, that does sound like it would.
In a pinch, you can leave out the honey and lemon juice.
You're right, you're right. And so, did you spend much time like around the Parkway or the Cone Manor growing up, or?
Not a tremendous amount, I mean, they were here, but I mean, they're a fixture. I mean, the Parkway's always been here as long as I can remember. So we would go out in the wintertime after I got back in the 70s. We would go out and cross-country ski up to where they were building the viaduct at the time. And it'd take about 3 hours to get up there. We'd have a picnic lunch, turn around. It took less than an hour to come back down.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that. And
Wow.
I did a lot of running over the years. So, I would go out and, knock out 10 miles on the Parkway once or twice a week sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Would you ever go run on any trails or just on the road?
If the trails in the Cone Park, we got 25 miles of trails in there. And, it was, I would run them all along the way, and had a couple of medical students that came up that were literally Olympic class runners. Had one guy that was torn between going into an ophthalmology residency or training for the Olympic trials and the 10K. And he'd run all over the country, the Prefontaine Trail out in Washington. He said our trails here in the Cone Park were as good as any place in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're gorgeous. They go on forever.
Mm-hmm. No, and they're gently graded too.
Yeah.
So. Do you have a favorite section of that you would go run or walk at?
What I would used to do is I would start at my house, which is just up the road here, run down across town, run up to the manor house, come back down, and I could, if I got out of the house, I got out of the office a little after 12, I could do that, take a shower, and be back in the office about 10 after 2. So
wow,
it worked.
I
used to run with dogs. I've had 7 golden retrievers that ran with me.
Mm-hmm. That's fun. Would they go with you when you do the cross-country skiing?
Occasionally we take them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've seen people where they're pulled by their dogs cross-country skiing. That's really cool. I haven't met anybody that would do that on the Parkway, and that's amazing. And then to see it while the viaduct's being constructed.
That road, that whole section was closed.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't graded, absolutely smooth and really neat. But we haven't had enough snow for cross-country skiing now for a number of years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay. So you've lived in Blowing Rock most of your life, and I'm curious, what about Blowing Rock is special to you?
The people, certainly. We have an amazing mix of people here. We got the locals who are, for the most part, just, rock solid, great people. They work for a living. And then we also have the visitors, or not the visitors, but the summer people, the people that are here for 3 months, 4 months, or whatever, and go back. And a lot of them have turned out to be movers and shakers and people like that. You get to know, not only in Blowing Rock, but that are through here, people like Wayne Housing, who had the Miami Dolphins and the Miami Marlins. You've had, I saw Anita Bryant as a patient one time. A lot of fairly famous people have summered here. We had Annie Oakley here many years ago. I never got to see her, but out at Greystone Towers, there are Annie Oakley stories there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen the articles from when she came to visit, like the old newspaper articles. You're right, it's people from all over the world come here, and one thing I love is going off the Parkway in October when the leaves are changing, you can stop at an overlook and hear like a dozen different languages. And it's so nice to know that it's like we're in such a gorgeous area that people want to come here and enjoy it.
Well, look at today. We've got Texas, Arizona roasting. We've got all of New England underwater from the floods. And we've got blue sky and sunshine, and it's not that hot out there. I mean, you know, the weather right now is pretty good. And this winter was nothing. So I put out my snow shovel and snow blower before Thanksgiving and did not move them until after Easter when I put them up.
Yeah. Yeah, no sledding happening this winter. Let's see. Well, I think that hit everything that I had on this list. Is there anything that, Steve, that we didn't touch on?
The only thing I can add, memory's exceptional, and really appreciate this, but events or people that over the time you've been here that really stand out to you, whether good, bad, indifferent, funny stories.
You'd have to put Jerry Burns at the top of the list. Jerry and I were old friends. We used to play poker together, and you know, he was indeed Mr. Blowing Rock. It was tragic to lose him when we did and the way we did. And then there have been any number of other people along the way that have, you know, been not, well, nobody's really made their mark as much as Jerry did. But if you look at the people we've had here, we had Grover Robbins for years who did Tweetsy. And I can remember Grover and my father sitting in our living room up the hill, and Grover telling my father what he was going to do, how he was going to buy this train and bring it up here, and you know, it was going to go part way around the mountain, and then you could stop and have a picnic. He was going to have Disney figures or something for the kids and all of that. And then all of a sudden now, Tweetsy's into its 50-odd years, and you know, it certainly brings a lot of people here. And of course, we are the prettiest town in North Carolina, I think, and the best shopping, so.
Do you ever remember riding the Ferris wheel roller coaster out at...
Where Chateau Cloud is? Oh yeah, I can remember that.
What was the feeling like when you went across that on the Ferris wheel?
Oh, you could
looking down at the gorge.
Yeah, that was a gorgeous view from up there, and you couldn't get a lot of people to ride it. And they had the little airplanes, and I think they had little boats that went around. And I also remember down here at Pearl Hill Lake when they had the little train that ran around Pearl Hill Lake. And it probably cost a dime or 25 cents to ride it around the lake, but kids got a big charge out of that.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that Ferris wheel, and I'm not surprised you couldn't get people to ride it. That looks very scary.
You always wonder if it broke loose and rolled where it was going to wind up.
What do you think one of the things that, two things about your father, Dr. Charlie, was his involvement in the school board for Blowing Rock, and the fact that he saw, even after he developed the medical clinic up at Blowing Rock Hospital, he saw what was happening to small town hospitals, and by adding the extended care unit, he extended the life of that hospital 30 or 40 years past where it should have ended.
Easily. And that was Ann Forsyth's generous gift too that did that. And we did not know if we were going to have a Cannon or a Forsyth or whatever. And the day before the dedication arrived, she announced she was going to name it after Dad. She said they would name it after him when he was gone. He might as well get the recognition then. So it became the Dr. Charles Davant Rehabilitation Center, and everybody thought we owned it, and you know, could fuss at me about the prices that were charged.
But it did extend the life of a small town hospital at least 40 years past where it should have been.
Yep, absolutely. And if we look around and you see what's happening now, Caldwell down in Lenoir is no longer delivering babies. You have to go to Morganton. The same thing is true over in Banner Elk. You know, you've got to travel miles for obstetrical care. And again, if you have any kind of thing major, you're probably going to get loaded onto a helicopter and shipped to Charlotte or Winston or wherever they can find a bed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember much about the time when your dad was on the school board?
A little bit. That was, again, part of the time was when I think I told you this was, when I was coming through, it was before there were consolidated schools. And so Dad got very involved. Then he was chairman of the county school board for several terms, and that's when consolidation and everything came in. And again, can still remember some of his moaning and groaning with the old school site and the new school site. You know, they had to buy all the land and everything. And apparently when they built the first consolidated school up here, they had an option to buy a whole lot more property right next to it, which later boards let expire. So they had to buy a whole bunch more property to build the new school. But consolidation came in, I think, just about the time my sister was ready for high school.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, that was
It's like 65, I think.
Yeah,
around then.
something like that, yeah. Well, we're blessed with great elementary schools
Mhm.
here. I mean, you know, scattered around as they are. But there's so many people that teach at ASU that have a wife that wants to teach or a husband that wants to teach, and you know, you've got a huge pool of people for teachers, which
Mhm.
helps a lot.
Yeah, and it's just nice. And Blowing Rock Elementary is one of the top schools in the state, and it's really just, I'm just amazed thinking about how isolated some of the places are in this county today, and then just imagining, like, did your dad ever make house calls?
Oh, he made house calls regularly. I used to be taken out on Sunday afternoons, and I'd sit in the car and listen to The Shadow or The Lone Ranger on the radio while Dad went in to see people. And he would go, you know, literally all over the county. There are only 2 or 3 doctors here, and
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 or 3 doctors in the whole county. That's amazing. And then, so the Davant Medical Park down 321, that's named like in honor of your father.
okay, let's see. You're talking about out of the Foley Center or the?
Oh, so is that the Foley Center, the big one, the new one that's built by the Welcome Center on 321?
Yeah, that's the Foley Center,
Okay.
and the Davant Medical Clinic is there, and it's kind of a funny story. We knew that Watauga was selling the hospital property here, and it was going to be developed as condos. And John Davis was my partner for over 40 years. We were trying to decide what to do, and Richard Sparks and the people at Watauga assumed we would go out to the clinic out at the Foley Center, which they decided to name after Mom and Dad. And then we were also talking to Glenn R. Fry in Hickory, who wanted a primary care presence up here in Boone. And we started talking to UNC Caldwell, and who would like to have done an urgent care, done something up here too. And along the way, we asked Richard, you know, if we got 12 employees, you know, what about our employees? And he said, well, there are going to be a number of positions at the new clinic they can apply. And we asked the Glen R. Fry folks, you know, what about our employees? And they said, well, we haven't thought about it. And we asked UNC Caldwell folks, and they said, they've been with you forever. They know you. They know the patients. We'll take them all. So nobody lost their job. And bingo, we're out there next to Subway. So
Yeah, that's really what's so important. I mean, something you just mentioned is the relationships with people, and then getting to know these folks over the years, and how important that is to have that trust
Yep.
with your doctor. And
yeah, well, you said you had talked to Carol Pitts, and Carol Pitts worked for us for about 20 years. So she turned 65 or 70 and decided she wanted to retire. I saw her the other day and told her we'd happy to have her come back. So she and Bill are amazing people, truly. Bill can fix anything.
mm-hmm.
Do you remember any stories about Dan Klutz and the ambulance, talking about ambulance service?
Gosh, I remember Dan Klutz and the Klutz farm and everything. I remember Ashland, and you know, some of his kids and everything.
Yeah, but remember the building beside the hospital where he kept that old Army ambulance?
Yep. That goes way back. That's, you know, lost in the midst of time too, but that was that building was there for a long time. And, it used to be, the funeral homes would transport people. They had the only vehicles suitable for getting a stretcher in the back, so.
Yeah, and then, I don't know whether it was Dan or your dad got that old surplus Army ambulance. And they parked it there, and I believe Dan was the only one that knew how to drive it or was willing to drive
Probably
it.
so. I can remember Dad would go, I think it was Asheville or someplace, to the surplus place there. And they could pick up all kinds of medical equipment there, for almost nothing. Yeah, Dan was a character too. Yep, but we still have a few left around here.
What's your favorite story about your parents growing up? If you getting in trouble or anything else?
Oh, I never got in trouble. Oh, gosh. Probably the most memorable thing I did was I was, probably 12 or so, and into model rocketry and such, and was up in the attic workshop or something, working with something called, I think it was caramel candy. You made your own and loaded it in, and I had one that kind of got away and got lodged in the ceiling up there. Didn't make it all the way through, but they were not happy about me dealing with explosives in the attic.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then, is your wife from around here?
My wife's from Monroe, down outside of Charlotte, and met her up here back, probably 66, something like that. She wanted to go to Myrtle Beach to work, and her parents said, no, you can go someplace safe like Blowing Rock. Little did they know, but
To work, so what did she do for work?
the first year or two she was here, she worked at Matar's Auction Gallery, which was now down where the antique shop was, where the old pharmacy was, and so on. And her job was to show the rings and the silver and everything down there. She said it was kind of like Vanna White or whatever. And somebody that you should have been able to interview in Kent was Butch Triplett. You probably have heard the name Butch Triplett. He had the Woodlands, which was the Grub Steak Saloon before that. And Butch and I were buddies, and we would go out and shoot frogs in the evening. And we would, seriously, we would go out, we could get maybe 18, 20 frogs, and we go around the lakes, use a light and a 22 with 22 shorts, shoot them between the eyes, rake them out, and Green Park and Mayview Manor would give us 75 cents or $1 for a pair of legs. So minimum wage back then was $1.35 an hour, and we could easily go out and make $20 or so a night shooting frogs. And so we had been out one night, very grubby and everything, and Butch said, I understand there's some new girls working at the auction down there, let's go check them out. So we went down to check out the girls.
Yeah, it's so fun where it seems like all the kids played together, you all had a lot of fun, like indoors, outdoors. And then just hearing about you and Butch going around at night shooting frogs, that's pretty great. So how old were you?
Oh, and then I was probably, that would have been like 65, 66 in there. So I was in my early, 20, 21, something like that.
So you're, on your way to being a doctor and still just going out shooting frogs.
Yeah. Exactly. We knew every little pond around. Butch was good at things like that. And then we've had any number of summer people here that were fairly well known or should have been fairly well known. Just comes to mind. One is Irma Lyons. And going back, Irma was married to Jim Lyons, who was a surgeon that practiced here for a goodly while, but she was noted as an actress and everything way back. I think she was a stand-in for Marilyn Monroe or whatever, and was in several things. And then her husband, first husband, was Ted Baker, and Ted Baker was on the cover of Time magazine. He was the founder of National Airlines. So I'm trying to remember the story, but it goes back again, until 1950 or something like that. And it was probably one of the Cannon, she would have been a great grandmother or something, that had basically taken to her bed and just, was sitting there despondent and not getting out. And so Dad had the idea, they got a new horse and brought it and tied it outside her window so she could see the horse. And after a little while, she got up and went out to see the horse, and within a couple of days was riding the horse again, and she was back and going. But again, that's, it may be apocryphal, but I mean, it's a long time ago and I wasn't there, but Zach may know the story. One of my claims I bought the first legal beer in Blowing Rock when it was finally voted back in. In the summertime, I worked at the Village Pharmacy, which was where Sunset Teas and Hattery is now, next to Sonny's Grill. And we knew it was coming, and I was working, and I saw the delivery truck pull in outside of Sonny's. Went over, and I think I wrote him a check for $5 for a case of Pabst Blue Ribbon. And, he ran it through. When I got it back, he wanted the check back. He kept it framed down there for a long time.
Oh wow, the first legal beer
in Blowing Rock. Yeah, I had bought one or two illegal beers before that.
How long did Bill Shaheen own the pharmacy?
For a long time. He owned the building and everything too. And yeah, Bill was a character. Yeah, for sure. But and I worked for him and Herb Gladden there for several summers anyway. Yep.
How'd you get your nickname?
My grandfather was Charles. My father was Charlie, but when he was a young boy, they called him Bunkus, and that's a lot of bunk. So when I arrived to keep me separate, they started calling me Little Bunk or Bunky. And you cannot come to a town the size of Blowing Rock with a nickname like Bunky and outgrow it or anything. The only time I have ever been Charlie was my first couple of months at Duke, and then the first girl from home that came down blew my cover. You cannot call somebody Charlie if you can call them Bunky. So, but so far, my son is Charles and my grandson is Charlie. So that's enough.
Your son's a doctor too, as well?
No, my son is an attorney in Washington, D.C., married to an attorney. So, okay. Yep. He works for Williams and Connolly, which supposedly is the #1 white-collar defense firm in the country. So they basically defend people. They don't prosecute or sue people, just, he's involved in a lot of legal malpractice defense and things like that.
How old's your grandson now?
Grandson is 11, I think, and my granddaughter is 15. But they keep changing. Every time you turn around, they've had a birthday.
Yeah. That's cool. So is your grandson Charles Davant the fifth?
The fifth.
Cool.
Or as my son says, Charles Davant the last. No, I told him, he was born in Washington, and I told Charles if I get something that says Fred Davant was born, I'll know something's wrong with the kid. So, but that goes back to Hilton Head in the late 1700s. There was one of my great grandparents was Charles Davant on Hilton Head, who was killed in a Revolutionary War ambush down there. And actually it happened after the war was over, but the internet was down and they didn't know. So.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing.
Was he with Francis Marion? Francis Marion, that was his home territory for 5 years.
Yeah, he was part of a group down on Hilton Head called the Bloody Legion.
Okay.
And I don't know that much more about it. The Bloody Legion was patriots on Hilton Head, and there was a gang of Tories on Dolfusky Island, which is right next to Hilton Head down there. And the Dolfusky guys had come over and ambushed some of the Hilton Head Patriots on their way back home. And so the next night, the Bloody Legion went over to Dolfusky and shot the guy that shot Charles Davant.
Okay.
When the name Barbara Baker and Sandy Shelley and things like that comes, I start remembering it a lot more all of a sudden.
So that's Sandy Shelley.
Yep.
Who was she?
She's Sandy Miller now.
Okay.
And she's another, we had a group of people up here, teenagers, local folks, and the Florida kids who just, meshed in very nicely with things. But we had Barbara Baker, Sandy Shelley. We had a group of 3 girls who were fifers, and they lived, over across town in the summertime. And if you're having a party, you'd say, who's going to be there? And so Barbara will be there, and Sandy Shelley, and the Pfeiffer girls. Nobody ever separated them out by name. They came as a set.
No, that's great. Moved as a unit, and that's so fun to hear that that y'all all came together, the locals and some of the summer folks.
But we didn't
would
have
hang
enough.
out.
We didn't have enough people to party separately, so we had to.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, tons of fun. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you,
Bunky. And
American Legion, or somebody was going to do a clock in the park on a rock pedestal or something. And Jerry and I got the idea of putting a plaque up there and listing all of Blowing Rock's characters over the years. And the idea would be, you got your name up there, you could be a hero, you could be a hooker, you could be a heel. You had to be somebody, you had to be a character that lived here. And so, now if we did it, Jerry Burns would be first, but Dude Teague, Sonny Klutz, a lot of the people that just really gave Blowing Rock its character would be up there. So I've offered to make a slight contribution to the Historical Society, but it'll be less now that I found out how much it costs to do stuff in brass or bronze or whatever. But John wants to do it a little bit differently. He wants, little biographies for people and things like that. And, I don't think anybody really cares about Pos Foster or, Rattlesnake Pete or whatever, the history or anything, just the name.
oh yeah, the names, and people could go look it up somewhere
Yeah,
else.
exactly. Oh, me.